Haha, that looks really cute.
Oh, I love it!
Welcome to the Mike Cassidy Photography Podcast.
Thank you, big voice in the sky. My name is Mike Cassidy, and I'm a boudoir photographer from New Jersey, and this is my show. I get to talk to some of the best photographers in the world to find out how they got started, what sparks their creativity, and what hurdles they've had to overcome to get their businesses going. Along the way, we'll probably have a few laughs, but I'm here to have in-depth conversations about all kinds of things you've always wanted to know from the best out there. So stay tuned. You never know what you may learn. It's hot. Heat. Greetings. My name is Michael, and I'm your neighbor. What's going on, everybody? Here we are in the heart of the summer, and I really love it. The sun, the warm air. You know, I've grown up near the beach, so I love going down there, and a few years ago, I started to do family beach photos. And I get to spend a lot of time with great families visiting the area who want to take vacation photos on the beach. And it's a lot of fun. What more fun can you have than hanging out in the sand, having a good time with photography, meeting people? It's been a strange year, though, for booking beach families because we had that awful spring virus. Nothing was going on. I mean, like, literally nothing. And I was like, I'm going to have a lot of free time on my hands this summer. It's not a bad thing. But then the last week of June, people suddenly started popping out of the woodwork, and my summer started to fill up a bit. And it's always interesting, though, doing beach photography because you never know what you're going to walk into. And last night I was with this very nice family, and had this little baby. Well, maybe it was a toddler. It's like a weird word, toddler. It was this little girl that was just starting to be able to stand and walk a few steps, and she wanted no part of photos. And she was crying and turning her head away and doing everything she could to not, get the photo taken. And she just started crying for her stroller. So the parents, go and get the stroller. They're dragging it out into the middle of the beach, and this baby/toddler only wanted to sit in this stroller. And it's tough because the parents get exasperated and they're apologizing to me, but what can you do? This baby/toddler is going to do what it's going to do. You can't force it to take photos. But they tried and they tried, but this baby wanted nothing to do with it, so you make the best of it. We took some photos of the parents and then the baby/toddler in the stroller on the beach. And, the little baby/toddler may not be your ideal client, but today we're going to hear from someone who is going to show us how we can target our ideal clients. Today is really an education. Heidi Thompson is our guest, and you can find her at evolveyourweddingbusiness.com. She is an expert marketer who works with wedding professionals, but these methods that we're going to talk about apply to anybody. And you know me, I'm dorky, and I get into this stuff. So we had a long talk about her system of Clone Your Best Clients, which is essentially identifying the people you want most as clients and learning how to attract them. And it works. What can I tell you? She's onto something. This episode is a good listen with a lot of strong information about growing your business. So go grab sweet tea or Nescafe on ice, if that's your thing. Go in the backyard and find your hammock and a nice shady spot and kick back and enjoy this episode on a great summer day. And as always, I like hearing from you. You can connect with me online on Instagram at Mike Cassidy Podcast, or via my email, mike@thephotographypodcast.show, if you like reaching out to me. And thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next show. This podcast and my website both focus on the goal of translating the art and business of photography and making it accessible and understandable to everyone. My goal is to provide the best content in photography for you, the listener. I've assembled a great team of photography guests and experts to make this happen. What I've chosen to do is create a subscriber model for my audience. If you value what I'm doing, you can become a member and support this podcast. In exchange, you'll get benefits over and above what's available for free. It's my goal to ensure that subscribers will definitely get back more than they give. I've created a membership program that brings you far more in-depth content if you want to take your knowledge of photography to the next level. Members will receive episodes with complete, unabridged interviews with our guests. Members will also get exclusive access to listen to and participate in AMA episodes. And there's more. If you would like to learn more now, head over to thephotographypodcast.show/subscribe. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode. Heidi, I'm talking to you. Heidi is here. And see, I enjoy talking to someone who is like a podcaster because they have a good microphone and I hear you so clearly. And it's, I don't know what you call it. It's like one of those AMSR or AMSR. Yeah. Podcasts. So I think tonight we're just going to be opening jars of pickles slowly. We're going to sit there all night and then I'll be crunching on pickles. And that's what this is high definition sounds that are coming through tonight. But we're alive. We're here. We're going to be talking a little bit about marketing this evening. Actually, not a little, probably a lot. Getting in depth here. Oh, did you stretch out?
Oh, yeah, I'm limber.
You ready to go? Because tonight we'd be maybe just handing the reins to you. It's going to be the Heidi Thompson show getting into this. So we're going to be talking a little bit to Heidi. Heidi, just take a moment and introduce yourself to our listeners here.
Well, hello, I am Heidi Thompson. I run Evolve Your Wedding Business, and my whole goal is to help wedding professionals grow their businesses without going crazy in the process. And that's actually where the topic that we're going to be talking about today came from, was really making it easier for my clients and my students to market to the people that they really wanted to reach and have success with it, because throwing everything at the wall and hoping something's going to stick, it just doesn't work super well.
Doesn't work that way. People, and I think the founding or the grounding or the note here or the message is that when people often get into photography businesses, whether it's wedding or whatever it is, there's this kind of like air out there that it's so simple. All you do is buy a camera, and the next thing, people are going to be throwing money at you. And I think the reality really hits people a couple months into that when all they hear are crickets, and it's not quite evolving the way that everybody showed them online. And one of the things that people don't take into account is photography isn't different than any other kind of business out there. You know, if you're baking cupcakes or whatever it is, there's a lot more work that goes into bringing in clients. So I was actually, because I'm like the creeper, I was listening to your podcast. I was on there listening, and you do a very good job.
Oh, thank you.
And you're very smart at this. So I know we're in good hands tonight. So, and a lot of the tips, and you can explain, is it's just not relevant to wedding businesses. This book, and I read it over, it really applies to any kind of photography business. And just I think anybody can take information from this and use it for their advantage. Would you agree with me there?
I totally would. And really the reason why the book is targeted to wedding professionals and my business is targeted to wedding professionals is, exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. You have to choose a group to target, to become known, to become the go-to person for that group of people. Doesn't mean it can't apply elsewhere. Like you were saying, this applies to any kind of photography business, really any kind of business. But I've really tailored it to wedding professionals because they're often in this weird situation that only happens in a couple industries where you really can't get repeat business, or you hope you don't.
Yeah. And two, I think really what happens there is like we mentioned, is that people think it's so easy, and they don't understand that marketing is such a big part, and it's not even just it's website and it's a whole bunch of other things that go into this that people kind of don't think about or don't know how much work is involved in this. And yeah, a lot of these concepts apply to almost anything. It's just basic marketing knowledge. So we're going to learn some good things here this evening, but just so people know, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you started and how you're involved with people and helping them with this marketing?
Yeah, so absolutely. It's a long and winding road, as it always is, when you find yourself in something that you really enjoy. I don't know if we ever fully intend to set out on the path we do, but I got started in events actually, I was still in college. And I was doing nonprofit events, working on fundraising events, and I loved it. And I got to work under a wedding planner after that, and I loved it and loved weddings. And I did some planning myself, but it really surprised me that the thing I enjoyed most about doing those fundraising events was the marketing. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't even know that's what it was called. But actually getting people to care, getting people to show up to a fundraising event, getting people to take action or donate to a particular charity, that was the piece of it that I really enjoyed and didn't realize was really a thing because I didn't.
Found your happiness.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Or your skill. You were able to help these people and they couldn't quite figure it out on their own.
Yeah, and then long winding road. I moved to England. I notice a gap in the market where what people are putting out in the British industry at the time was very much like white and fluffy. And that was the exact opposite of what people were leaning toward. They were going the more offbeat bride route. So I started a wedding fair called the Alternative Wedding Fair. And I brought together these couples who wanted something really different, and some of the most creative human beings I've ever met in my life, who would just create these like insane cakes or like wedding dresses that could be
the vendors. You mean like
yeah,
yeah,
like these dresses could be from a costumer in a Broadway musical. Like they're just so incredible. But I found myself really coaching them to get a better return on their investment. And it kind of smacked me in the face that not everybody just enjoys marketing. And at this point, I had been working in marketing in a bajillion different fields. I'd worked in software, I worked in healthcare, education. I actually did marketing for a fecal transplant clinic.
There you go.
If I can market that, you can market your photography business. So I just found okay, this is something that I'm just really into, that I really love. And I see this opportunity to help these incredibly talented people make the money that they deserve to be making. Because, if you're paid on your talent, you'd be a millionaire by now. Right.
So, yeah, you've been doing this for a while, and apparently you're very effective, and you've developed your business around this, which is the Evolve Your Wedding website. And what can people find over there, and what's going on that website?
Yeah, so at evolveyourweddingbusiness.com, I have a free training you can jump into that shows you exactly how to make your marketing easier and more effective. We have all the podcast episodes. As we're recording this, I am just about to publish, I think it's episode 169.
That's a lot of shows.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's a lot of recording.
Yeah, there's tons of blog posts, tons of resources for you over there.
Yeah, so there's a wealth of information, and we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. I just wanted to give everybody a quick overview of what we're doing. And today we're really going to hit the marketing books, and we're going to cover a little bit of ground on one of your books, so to speak, and it's called Clone Your Best Clients. And it really is a good education on how to take some simple concepts that may not be very evident to people and how to apply them to really, the bottom line is to make money and to attract people. And one of the interesting things that I saw when reading over your book, and start at sort of the beginning here, and we'll give some people some tips and tricks as we go along here, is that often, people know about marketing. It's nothing that's like a secret. And what was probably very accurate in what you said is people may have all these marketing tools and they try to apply them without really having a blueprint. They have this, they have that, they have the ads, and they just don't have a formula to maximize all of this. And that's the fundamental error that people make just from the start. And elaborate on that a little bit, because I thought that was very accurate, and it's people are jumping the gun and not really thinking about how to apply all these tools that they have in front of them.
Yeah, I'm very strategically minded, so I like to take a big picture view of things. And I think that helps in marketing a lot, because we get so focused on the individual little granular things that it becomes overwhelming and we lose the plot of what we're trying to do here. So what I mean by you have all these marketing tools and no blueprint. So you're posting on Facebook and you're posting to Instagram stories, and maybe you've worked on the SEO of your website, but there's no cohesive strategy to position you as the go-to person for the person that you want to work for. So just throwing all this random stuff out there doesn't attract them, because you haven't engineered it to attract them. We don't have to just, throw things out there and hope. We can actually build it so that by design, it's like this lighthouse, it's this beacon for the right people who will see you, and then we'll look at other photographers, and it's like an apples to oranges thing. It's like,
yeah. And the great part about the first part of this is really it's titled Why Your Marketing Doesn't Work. And when you read through that, you're like, wow, that's how I do it. And that's how I do it. And you don't realize, and it's one of those things where it just clicks and you're like, now it all kind of makes sense to me. And so it's great to read through that, because you're like, oh, maybe that's not how things should be done. And, one thing that's often talked about in terms of marketing and is that a lot of people I think are very afraid to sort of narrow down or niche down, or they try to be everything to everybody, which is a big mistake. I think that is obvious, but it's different from business to business, but wedding or child's portrait or infant portraits or so may have a little different ranges. But how do people go and how do they start to figure out even who their best client is, so they can start to narrow down their focus?
Yeah, and what I really want to encourage people to think about here is putting yourself in your customer's shoes. So really, why should they work with you over someone else? A lot of times that's a race to the bottom when it comes to price.
Right.
But if you can make yourself like the absolute go-to person for your ideal client, when they try to compare you, there's no comparison. It's, this is the right fit. And I guess if I can't go with them, then I'll go with, one of these other people. And it's really about, putting yourself into a category of one and really making sure that you do that with who you are appealing to, because you can't appeal to everyone.
Nor should you try.
No.
And I think that's the beginner mistake, is because you don't want to offend people, or you think that everyone's going to be your client. But in the long term, I don't think especially on the money front, that's going to work out best for you.
And the funny thing about that is it's completely counterintuitive.
It is. You're right.
Okay, I'm going to target as many people as I can. And so that means I will book more people. When really, if you specialize, then you will attract more people to you and you will book more. And even though it feels like, okay, I'm limiting my pool, like my business is focused on wedding businesses, I attract plenty of photographers who do weddings and do portraits and do family and do a bunch of other things. It isn't limiting. It allows me to stand out. So an example I give in the book is, if you had to have heart surgery, would you want to have that surgery done by your general practitioner or by your cardiologist.
Yes.
And maybe not even just the cardiologist that's near you, maybe the best in the country, maybe the best in the world. And those people are sought out because they're incredibly specialized and because of their skill. But the skill alone doesn't, make them sought out. If they were just a really good doctor of every kind, you wouldn't seek them out for this specific problem you have. And
the cardiologist is focusing on one particular need. He's not concerned about people with itchy armpits or something like that. He's heart people, and so by doing that, he can earn a lot more money.
Yeah. And it's going to have way more specialized knowledge. That experience is going to be different. When you choose to specialize, and it could be specializing in the type of client that you work with. You want to appeal to tattooed couples who don't want to cover up their tattoos in their wedding photos. Awesome. That is something you can really market yourself around. It's something you can brand yourself around visually so that if that person is looking for a photographer, they're going to see themselves represented in what you're doing and be like, hell yes. And then see everybody else where they kind of don't see themselves as much.
Right. And we'll get into this a bit more, but it is really important. I said, like you mentioned, to niche yourself down or to really find out who this person you want to service is, like that cardiologist. And then often people are such generalists when they start, and I don't blame anybody, because when you're first getting into the business, you're just surprised if someone contacts you and wants to go, and as you move along, you kind of can narrow down the people you want to deal with. And then the other mistake I think that people make too is when they go to advertise, if say you do want to spend money on Google ads or Facebook ads or everybody, they're just spraying ads out there, as you call it, all over the place and crossing their fingers again and hoping that someone responds to that, which could be ineffective, and a terrible waste of money, can't it?
Yeah. And, I have the perfect example. In April, I ran my first virtual event. I ran Book More Wedding Summit. And with that, I ran Facebook ads with it. And the people that I targeted with those Facebook ads were so specific. It was, people who've already been to my website and a lookalike audience of those people, or people who like a specific page that is related to mine. I don't want to target everybody in the world with this because they're not going to come, they're not going to buy, and it's going to be expensive.
Right.
And I think too often we get focused on the demographics. Like if you've ever heard that you need an ideal client, you're probably thinking, okay, brides, or okay, families. But that doesn't help you. And I have a real problem with the typical, in air quotes, ideal client exercise, because I think it's useless. Like, why does that help me to know?
Because it's still too broad.
Yeah,
basically what it means. It's not a real thing. Yeah.
You can't do anything with the information, and if you can't take action on it, it's pretty pointless. So I really like to help my clients, help people who read this book, drill down beyond, bride. I say bride is not
going deep. It's going deep.
Yeah, bride is not an identity. It's a role you play for a day.
Right.
But it's not an identity. And the reason why identity matters is because marketing is psychology. You have to understand why someone makes the decisions they make and what they value and what they're willing to spend more on, because all those things drive their purchasing decisions. So if you can understand who someone is, like really get them and understand their values and what they saw in you, that is just going to help you attract more of those people
in the long run. And what we're going to talk about here, it's like anything else, it's work. And if one of the things I talk about on this show is, nothing is that's good for you is easy. Like going to the gym for one day doesn't give you big muscles and, make you strong. It's that repeated going, it takes work to do. And then something like this too, to really find out who that person is, that it does take a little bit of work. So we're going to break those steps down. But, you know, the great thing I like about that is it's straightforward and honest, sort of the way you approach this. And it does take a little bit of effort, but you will be rewarded once you find out who this person is that is your ideal customer.
Totally. And I am of the mindset that if something I'm teaching can't be used and implemented, then it's pretty useless. So I try to keep things really practical. I try to keep things very, you know, step by step, so that, yes, I want people to understand why they're doing what they're doing, because that's important.
So, but you're telling me I can't appeal to everybody? I can't be everybody's friend if I want to make money?
No, sorry.
Oh my God, I thought this was going to be so simple.
I actually think it's much simpler to like pick someone and focus on them. I get that at first it's going to be a little scary because it is counterintuitive, but you will prove it to yourself that, you know, what I tell my clients to do is look at the people that you have worked with, that you wish you could clone and work with over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's scary, I think, too, because people think right away you may be chopping away at a bunch of people that are potential clients. And I think that's what it kind of is, you know, the fear is with people. They're just trying to hang on, and you're telling them to look the other way at a bunch of people, but it's really the move in the long run.
And it doesn't mean that you can't work with those people.
No,
it just means that your marketing is not geared
You don't want
to those people.
Spend the money chasing after things that you're not going to get a significant return on, is really what I think that boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to attract people who are similar to your ideal client, who maybe just have like one thing in common with your ideal client. You know, it's kind of a dartboard situation where your ideal client is the bullseye, but you don't have to shut yourself off to those outer rings either. You know, an example I give, a planner I works with Mexican-American couples, and her weddings are just awesome. Now, I'm a white girl and I love Mexican design. I love Mexican culture. She is the planner that I would go to for that kind of event. Am I her ideal client? No, but I also resonate with that style.
What she said.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be, you know, so on the nose. It's just like if you don't point a magnet in any direction, then it can't attract anything.
Right. So you have to pick. You have to choose.
And you can change it. You can always change it.
You know, but I think for the long-term health, and I think especially with people who want to specialize a little bit more within their genre. Say if you are a wedding photographer and you do want to target very high-end brides or very high-end weddings, it does take learning what those people are and what they're about, so you can attract them rather than just, you know, spending a lot of money and crossing your fingers and hoping. So we'll talk a little bit about this and your concept of this amorphous blob. So when you're starting, basically it's a big bleh, and then what you want to do is mold that clay or mold that form into your ideal person, the ideal person that you'd like to get that email from or that text message from or that phone call from, that you want to be your client. So what is this amorphous blob that we were discussing in your book? Yeah,
so that is, you know, any demographic you have, any vague notion that you have of who you want to work with, like brides, which is what I get all the time. And I get it because that's where we start, but you have to drill down. So if you're telling me that your ideal client is a woman and she's engaged and she's between 25 and 40 and she lives within 50 miles of your city, okay, what do I do with that? Where do I go from here? Is this 25 to 45-year-old woman a Walmart shopper or a Whole Foods shopper? Are they outdoorsy? Do they really care about the experience that their guests are going to have? Is that the biggest thing for them? Really understanding what they care about. And that comes from identifying who are those people that you've worked with that you want to clone? And if you don't have anyone that you've worked with, you can just base this on a hypothesis. Who do you think you want to work with? Who is this person? Maybe you know someone like this person that you'd like to work with that you can base this off of. But the shaping of this comes through practice, not through sitting and thinking about it. It's actually talking to these people and adapting your marketing to suit them. And then maybe you take another pass at that marketing and, tighten it up just a little bit to make it
narrowing it down. Yeah.
Yeah. Make it even more appealing as you learn more and more and more about who this person is.
Yeah. So that's a big mistake, I think, that a lot of people do, is that 25 to 35-year-old, corporate woman or whatever is just too broad. That could be 1 million people in your area if you're in a metro area, in a larger area. And it's really, that's, like you said, that's more of a role. It's maybe not an identity.
And it's boring. It's not captivating. Why should I give you money if that's how you're going to market?
You're not speaking to the person. You're not identifying with somebody there. And, like you said, pride is not an identity. People need to take that next step. And one tip in your book says, to think back or to think of some people that you've worked with to start off. And then what was that exact, like a real person, not a fictional person, but someone you actually did, and someone that you would imagine you would want to be texting you or emailing you over and over and over and over again, that you'd always want to work with. And that's ideally what this is about, is to define that person. And how do we start to do that? Or what's the process in learning who that is?
Totally. And I really want to focus on this, and I want you guys to know that the reason why I focus on this is because we want to get away from the vague descriptions. We want to get away from the amorphousness that doesn't allow us to do anything. This is actually going to allow us to do something when we get out of the hypotheticals. So the first step is to identify, okay, who are these people that I've worked with that I wish I could just work with every single day of the week? They would just make me the happiest person in the world. And as you start identifying these people, and as you're paying attention to who they are as people, not as whatever role they fill, you're going to start to notice some similarities. And I like to start here with that introspective piece of really just looking at, what do these people have in common? If I put all these people together at a party, what would we talk about?
Would you even say a good exercise is for people who want to practice is to actually go through some former clients and look up and write their names down, to make a list of people that really existed in their past?
100%, because you're going to reach out to them. So I'm all about, being in your head to look at patterns and get curious about the kinds of people that these clients are. But where the real gold is hiding is in their heads. And we don't tap into this. Almost nobody taps into this in their business. And the amazing thing about it is if you actually talk to your best clients, those clonable clients, and you ask them questions and you get information from them, they will tell you how to attract more people just like them. Right. This is what I was attracted to. This is what I would say to my best friend about you and your business and why they should work with you. They're going to give all this to you. So I get that this sounds like work, but oh my God, does it make your life so much easier?
And it's this idea that you want to, and we'll get to this in a bit, interview these people. I mean, really interview them with some pointed questions there too. And then the idea we're driving at here is you're going to take all this information and sort of assimilate it, and from that you're going to find out who your best clients really are, and then use that information for some powerful marketing. And the idea here is that we're going to like make the bionic client. We're going to take all these people, take their best parts and form your ideal client from them and use that information to go forward. Because I think in your message again, which is really true, when your marketing is not in line with this ideal person, and it's not going to work for you like you want.
Yeah. And to give you an example, so there is a planner that I worked with, and she was having trouble booking clients. So we looked at her marketing, we looked at how she was communicating, the messaging she was using on her website, who she was saying that she was trying to attract. Right. And the way that she was positioning herself was, you need to hire me because I'll help save you time, which a lot of planners do. But here's the thing. She went through this process and she interviewed her best clients, and they didn't care about that. What they cared about was one or both members of the couple were Indian. They were often younger siblings in the family. They have been to their sister's wedding. They've been to their brother's wedding. They've been to their cousins' weddings and their friends' weddings. And the last thing they wanted was a cookie cutter Indian wedding. So they just wanted, they wanted someone who understood Indian culture and could create like this beautiful Indian wedding, but also infuse it with them, their personalities. And the second she started marketing herself based on that problem that she was solving, she started booking up like crazy.
Yeah. So I guess that the lesson there is that, the problems or the issues you think you are addressing in your words may not really be the real problems of the people you're trying to reach out to.
Yeah. And, we also, businesses exist to solve problems. And yeah, we're not curing diseases, but we're still solving some sort of problem. Whether that problem is, I want to be able to remember this day for the rest of my life and show this to my kids and my grandkids. Or maybe it is that you want to save time. Or maybe you want a really, really personalized ceremony that no one else in the world is going to have that's so specific to you and your partner. And when we aren't really trying to solve the problem that our ideal client wants us to solve in our marketing, they're not interested because they're literally not buying what we're selling. We're selling them the wrong thing.
You're not on the same wavelength.
Right. Like we're trying to, sell them a bunch of tools, and they're like, I just need someone to hang this picture up in my house. Like I don't need to be Nick Offerman and be doing woodwork. I don't need all that stuff. So a really good place you can look to this to see how other brands appeal to their ideal clients, because when you start to notice this messaging, you're going to notice it everywhere. The way companies and brands talk about whatever their product or service does for their customer. And that's what you're really selling.
Interesting message. Yeah. And I think that when you look at people's websites, first of all, this I hate down, but I think a lot of photographers have great messages to begin with. But if they do, and this is where another big error comes in, because a lot of people in the photography business, they look to the left, they look to the right, and try to see what everybody else is doing, and they copy the same exact thing, because they think, oh, well, everybody else is doing this, so therefore I should have the same wording on my website, which is a mistake.
Yeah.
Because again, who knows if these people are crazy? Who knows if they know what they're doing?
Who knows if they're making any money?
Yeah, or what's going on. And then people copy things because they have this message and this message on there. But even if that was the case, you're still not separating yourself. You having the same text on your website and saying the same exact thing as the 5 other or 10 other wedding photographers in your area isn't going to help you. You can't succeed, and you can't go out and do that. And it just takes it. We're going deeper. You got to do more.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do is blend in with the pack.
And that's the sad truth, I think, of what happens a lot of times. And so this is really helpful information because, like we said, it's a little bit of work, but by finding these details out and what Heidi's going to talk about and how this all comes together is really how somebody can be different and, you're not commoditizing yourself. And that lets you charge more, just like the cardiologist can charge more. And he doesn't care. And he's driving around in a brand new Mercedes and you're not, but you could. But if you were weird and different enough, you could. So this is what we're going to get into and a little bit about this message. And it's super important, too, is, as you mentioned, and I'm repeating this again, but you can't make up issues just because they sound good, like you're solving somebody's problem, because no one may have that problem and you're just veering off into to the side. And that's not really what people are interested in. You really have to find out why your people are seeking you out and so forth. So what we're going to do here is, all right, this is where everyone's going to have to get their notepads and paper and pencils and start jotting this down. And we're going to review a little bit about this process. Okay, this sounds intriguing. I need to find out my client's message. I need to be unique and ideal. And where's the starting point? If I want to change my marketing today and want to try these ideas, what do I do? Where do I begin?
So some really simple places you can begin is with the audience you already have, whether you have an email list or an Instagram account or a Facebook page. You can reach out to these people or you can ask wider questions. So what questions do you have about choosing a wedding photographer? What are you struggling with when it comes to planning your wedding? Because this information is going to tell you what problems they have and what problems they're looking to have solved. And this is going to lead your content marketing strategy. So if you're creating Instagram captions that are educational in any way, which you totally should be, or if you're creating blog posts, these are the topics that you want to cover because these are the questions that your potential clients have.
Problems that you're really solving that they have. Yeah. So you're going to ask them what their issues were, and that way you'll know it's a real person responding to you.
So
that's so simple and so genius.
I do this all the time, even just in little things like polls on Instagram. Like, are you more interested in this or this? And I just go with it. I don't question it too much. Like when I was trying to develop how to describe myself, I was initially focusing that messaging around helping wedding professionals make more money. And then I actually ran that and a couple other versions of describing what I do by people. I put it in a poll in a group. I asked my email list. The one that I thought that was going to be the most popular was the least popular.
Right.
I was like, okay.
So you were a little surprised. Yeah. So an example would be if you're a wedding photographer and you're in business and you're like, boy, I got to start making some more money. You can go to your email list, your previous clients, or it doesn't have to be all of them. I guess you can use a sample of them. And then even one question, like you said, what were your struggles when finding a wedding photographer? And send something like that out to them. And how many questions would you put together? Or what's a good list, or where do you start, or where do you get these questions from?
Well, in this phase, I would say keep it short. But if we're talking about actually approaching people to interview, there are a lot more questions that I would want to ask someone. So you definitely want to ask, some of my favorite questions to ask are things like, why did you choose to work with me as opposed to any other photographer? And then shut up and listen. Always just shut up and listen, let them talk. Don't, try to over explain. And another one that is really, really valuable is if you were referring me to a friend of yours, what would you say to them? And why should they contact me? Because they're going to tell you exactly what your ideal clients need to hear. And it's absolute gold. You can take exactly what people tell you and use it in your copy on your website. You can,
those exact words.
Yes, yeah. And don't change them, because when we do change them, we muck them up with our expertise. Whereas we're dealing with people who don't know anything about photography.
They're being honest.
Yeah, they're just being candid. Like, I just wanted this. So use their actual words. And any copywriter will tell you that this is a process they go through. They'll look at Amazon reviews of products. They will talk to people. They will listen, and they will use the actual words and phrases that come out of people's mouths because that's what they're thinking. And
it's a real message.
Yeah. It's not, over corporatized and hasn't been approved.
Or biased.
Yeah.
I guess that's a big thing. Wouldn't you agree? Bias, because you're going to take that information and again say, well, I think she kind of means something like this.
Yeah. Don't try to make sense of it. Like, it just is. This is what this person thinks. Mm-hmm. And when you're actually doing these interviews, you're going to find so many things repeated. They may be repeated in slightly different ways, but they're going to be repeated. And they're going to be things like, why did they decide to work with you? What was really important to them? Why did they choose the package they chose? What would you say to someone if you were telling them that they should work with me? Chances are they're going to give you quite similar answers. Sometimes you get things that stand out,
right,
but they're usually things that you don't even realize that you're doing that are really, really important to them.
It could have been something so simple as he made me laugh or she made me laugh the whole time there. It was very easygoing. Things you may not immediately think that is a positive or why someone would choose somebody else. Like, especially in what I do, if you're working with women, mostly women with not a lot of clothes on, this is not a situation that women find themselves in every day. They may, causing them to be at ease and something like that. And boy, he just made me feel so comfortable, or she made me feel so comfortable. Could be something that's huge in the minds of your clients where you never thought about it. You're like, I was just doing my job. So it's always hard to know what's important to somebody else. So you ask.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it is simple, but we don't do it.
This is true. So you would make a big list of questions, mm-hmm. And I think, too, another point here, if people may feel awkward about asking these previous clients, but you've probably earned, if you've done a good job, you've probably earned a few moments of their time, and they'd be happy to answer for you as long as you put it in a format. Hey, guys, please, I'm just looking if you can help me out with a few simple questions. And if you have 10, would you email the same question to everybody or break it up a little bit if you say 5 to one group or 5 to another group, or doesn't it? You don't think it really matters?
It really depends on the format you're doing this in. So if you are trying to get people to hop on a call with you, I would just focus on that. If you are sending this out in a survey format, I would just have them all. Maybe just make only the most really crucial ones required. And the way that I approach people with this is with genuine flattery. And it's just telling them, like, look, if I could work with you all day, every day, I'd be the happiest person in the world, but I can't do that. So if you could take, if we could chat for 15 minutes, or if you could answer the questions in the survey, that would really help me find, more of the Jessicas of the world so that I can work with them. And they're going to be thrilled, right? Like, you're so amazing. I think you're great. Can you help me find people that are close to as great as you? Who doesn't want to hear that?
Right. No, yeah. And I think the key, too, is to be genuine, to be honest or just how, hopefully you are genuine when you're talking to people. And as far as phone interview, although it's kind of tricky to get people on the phone these days, a lot of people don't answer their phones. People just want to text you. But yeah, you can get somebody on the phone, or even, we were talking about earlier, get them on Skype, or if you're a Zoomer or something like that, they can do that on their phone for a few minutes of their time. And would you be busy with a notepad, just jotting down all these things? Because you're going to forget if you're not recording it in some way or writing it down. So I guess you need to have a notepad handy especially if you're on a phone call with somebody and be jotting everything down that they say. So is there how can I keep track of all this? Like, if I'm talking to 10 people, what's the ideal? Each person make like a worksheet and have 10 pieces of paper for the 10 people you talk to and compare and contrast. All these are, once we go out and do this, and we have this data, or am I jumping ahead of myself here? Probably a little bit. But how do we take this then and condense it down into like some useful information?
Yeah, so there's going to be things that come to you through text. There's going to be conversations that you have. And even if you have a phone conversation, you can download an app to record it so that you can reference it. Because when we hear people speak, we hear it synthesized through our interpretation of it. When really, for something like this, we need to hear literally word for word what they say. So recording it definitely helps. And then I just encourage people to create a copy bank somewhere. So this could be a spreadsheet, this could be a Google Doc, and just organize, the answers to these questions, the phrases that kept coming up, the things that they thought were important. Because once you have everything in one place, you can really look at, okay, what do I want to highlight in my marketing? Which of these things that people said that they really valued, what am I not doing a good enough job communicating? So you can look at what you're currently doing, compare it to what people say they want, and then connect the dots from there. So, you may go through this a page at a time through your website. You may change up the kind of content that you're posting on Instagram. It's just a matter of that awareness of, okay, I thought I was solving this problem, but it turns out I'm solving a completely different problem.
A different problem that you weren't aware of. Yeah.
So I just need to weave that in to all of my content, my website, all of my marketing, to make sure that it's representative of what people are saying. Because we want this to stand out to them so strongly that, when they land on your website or when they land on your Instagram profile, they're like, oh, yes, this is the person for me. I need to hire them right now.
Yeah, and maybe we were talking about recording. It's a good idea because it just popped into my mind that if you're talking to somebody and just taking notes, you could be skipping over things or not writing things down that are really the important things, and you could be writing things down that, again, you could be like biasing yourself by what you jot down. So if you hear the entire conversation, you can go back and listen to it and look for similarities in the people that you're talking to.
Yeah, and you can get that transcribed. There's a million tools for that. I keep the recordings that I do, so I'll go back and I'll listen to what people told me, and I will always find something new.
And then you mentioned here too, as far as forming these questions, and as listening to the responses, and you went even as far as the things that we're looking to identify people, maybe even certain brands that they use or where they're shopping. So no detail is apparently too small. So if your customers, a big chunk of them are buying a certain kind of a wedding dress or buying a certain brand of whatever it is, that could be really important ammunition for you to target or to know to make that a real person.
And it's funny because when you take a step back and look at how we associate brands with people, like sometimes you might see someone and you're like, oh, I bet that woman drinks kombucha every single day. And that tells you something about who that person is, because that's a behavior, they're choosing to spend their money in a certain way. And then that also allows you to take advantage of the money that huge corporations have spent and figuring out how to communicate to them. You can look at the messages that they're using. You can look at what is clearly resonating with them, and you can borrow from that.
Right. And the point is, no detail is too small. Again, or if you think something is insignificant, you may be the world's biggest kombucha marketing wedding person. Mm-hmm. You may market to people who love kombucha, and there's this underground group of people who would say, that's my guy or that's my woman. I'm going to him. So you don't want to overlook even these smaller details. And but now when you talk about these brands, is that something that you would actually put into a question, or that where do you shop, or would you just see these turning up in answers and make note of any specifics that people mention like that?
Yeah, so a couple questions in the book about that are what are some brands you love and what are some brands you hate?
Oh, so you would explicitly put that into an interview question. Yeah, okay.
Because people love telling you what they hate. People like talking
or what they buy. Yeah.
And people like talking about themselves. So they'll say, oh, I buy all my clothes at, this store, and, I would never shop at that store because that store is horrible, and this is why. So it gives you more information on both what to do and what to avoid.
Right. Okay. So this could take a while too. So this may take you a week or 2 weeks because, who wants to talk to people anymore? So you would have to set up these interviews and go through this. So I imagine this is not something you're going to do in a day or two. This whole process, as far as talking to you, this may take 2 weeks. It could take a month.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, but the great thing about it is that it informs literally everything else in your business. So going from here, well, these people just told you where they found you, and they told you where they did and didn't look for their photographers. So now you know where to market and you know what to say. So it is a process. You never have to go through the full length, first time of doing this again.
Right.
But I like revisiting with my best clients. Like maybe I'll hop on a call with them once a year, catch up, see how they're doing.
Keep in touch.
Yeah. And then, ask them some questions about, what are you struggling with? Because I work with people for, prolonged periods of time.
Right.
If their business grows and evolves.
You build that relationship with.
Yeah. And they have different problems at different stages. So then I can position myself as being able to solve those problems that maybe I didn't think anyone cared about, but it turns out they do.
And then once I get all this work done and I've got all my questions and I got my list of people and I'm going to start calling people and I got a few appointments lined up, you really can't waste time. You have to have some interview skills. You have to know how to, and I guess you don't want to approach it like an interrogation, but you have to know how to extract the information you need from these people. Mm-hmm. And then you have a technique for doing that, which is pretty straightforward. And it's probably happened to everybody, and they didn't ever realize that this is what somebody was doing to them. Because, often people aren't going to answer your question the first time or give you the information you want the first time you ask them a question. So tell it a little bit about your interview technique and how that can help you dig down and get the really root cause of what you're trying to find out from your client. Yeah,
so keeping in mind that this is psychology and we're trying to get down to the motivations. Like, why are people choosing the brands they choose, doing the things they do? We want to use something called the laddering technique. And let's say you ask them why, the example I give in the book is, if you're a stationer and you say, why did you decide to book this package? And they're going to tell you, well, this piece of it was really important to me, and I really wanted my invitations to stand out. Okay. You could leave it there, or you could take it a step further and say, oh, okay, why was it so important to you that your invitations stood out? And maybe they're going to say something like, look, all my friends are getting married right now, and they're just sending out the most bland, boring, like milquetoast invitations, and I want mine to be different because I want my wedding to be different. That tells you so much more about what's going on in that person's head than just, I want that package.
Right. You have to dig deeper.
Asking why really, really helps.
Mm. And then sometimes do it again, even until you get really to, and it takes practice because it's not a typical way. I guess if you worked in sales a little bit, this is something you may learn, if you've had some sales training and so forth. It's really just answering a question with another question and, saying why or trying to get to the root of the problem. And I think it's something that takes a little bit of practice, and it's some good information in your book because I've run into this before. And it really is helpful because you're right. The first answer you get from somebody may not exactly be helpful or may not be what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I just really encourage people to get curious, because if you come at this from a place of genuine curiosity, you're not going to come off weird about it. It's going to be clear that you care about the person and you want to understand them better.
And then, so you're digging deep. You're digging deep to get to the root of your questions. And this is true, and I can vouch for this. People aren't always going to offer up the truth in the first answer that they give you, and you gotta dig down and ask them sometimes 2 or 3 times to get to the real reason of the question. And it seems like it wouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah, and people will, give you this information. You just have to stay curious and remember that so many people think marketing is just promoting, but really, when you get right down to it, marketing is psychology. You have to understand what someone wants in order to charge money for it.
Right. And it's also the case that someone, too, may be answering a question what you want to hear, again, not necessarily the real answer, too. So asking them a couple times, sometimes, I don't hate to say breaks them down, but it gets them talking a little bit more, and then they'll give up the real reason of why you're, or the real answer to the question that you were answering.
And you can always, if you're doing this in an email, if you're doing this in a survey, you can also just respond to the person and say, hey, I noticed you said this. Like, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. And just do a little bit of a follow-up, or if someone emails you that I'm looking to do this for myself, in a boudoir, and the woman says, may say, oh, that's great. What exactly were you trying to, and you could follow up with that question and maybe get a little bit deeper. Oh, I went through a recent weight loss or a divorce, and you could find out some more information about why they're actually coming to you, other than that surface reason that they gave you just for myself. But there could be more information down below that can really help you as a marketer to know why they were coming in to see you.
And so much of marketing and sales is just connecting the dots between what someone actually wants, not what you think they want, and what you're able to do for them. Right.
And this will take practice, talking to people like this and going through all this. And you may fumble through the first time or two you're talking to somebody because you'll feel awkward about it, but you get used to it. You get used to asking the second question like that, or the third question, and whether you're recording this or taking notes, you'll see how people's from the A, B, and C level, the answers change until you really get to their root reason of why they contacted you, or whatever the other question was. And this will take you a while. Like we said, you may take a few weeks to get through all this, and you'll get better at it as you go along. And you're going to wind up with tons of information, aren't you? They're going to wind up with a lot of recordings, or a lot of notepads, or a lot of data, piles of it. And then what do I do now that I have all these notes on my client?
That's where you're going through, you're organizing it into a copy bank. I know.
We're not done yet. Oh my goodness. All right. I'm still with you. This sounds good.
And looking at what did people say and what am I saying? What do I say on my homepage? Is what I say showing up at all in these interviews? And if not, I need to change that. I need to use this language because this is what they really care about.
Because these are real people. Right. So you're looking for similarities on your copy versus what you're hearing from the clients. Or you may be pushing whatever you're pushing, and it's nowhere showing up in your ideal client, so it's time to make a change.
Yeah, and so much of the reason why marketing doesn't work is because there's a disconnect somewhere. And usually it's a disconnect between what you think someone is after and what you are telling them that you can do for them. Like, yes, I can save you time, but, well, I don't care about saving time. Okay, well, I can create this personalized, wedding for you. It's just what you highlight, and you have to really highlight the pieces that your ideal client cares about so that the second they come across you, they understand whether you're the one for them or not.
And it may turn out, like you said, whether your wedding or whatever your genre of photography is, infant for kids photography, there could be something in there, like, oh, she had such a pleasant personality. Oh, you may see something like that over and over and over again, or whatever they're giving back to you. That may be nowhere on your website, or what like you said, you may have, I'm saving time, and none of your people may have responded. Why they came to you was that you were saving them time in any way. So you've got to carefully look through that. Now, when you have all this information, 10 people, 20 people, or so forth. What's the best way to kind of sort through this? Are you doing it like question by question and making kind of like a spreadsheet and like question 1 and listing all the answers across, or question 2 and listing all the answers across in some kind of format?
That's
like that?
my personal approach. If you hate spreadsheets, just use a Google Doc.
It seemed would be the easiest thing, because you can see them all across and compare and see what, and then you have to, like you said, you may have to transcribe it, because if you're recording things, you may have to sit there and write it all down, replay over and over again.
Yeah, and there's so many services that, you can use to do it, whether it's a very small fee or it's free. There are tons of tools.
Now, when you have this, they would just theoretically have these 5 or 10 questions. How do you determine from this pool of new information that you have, is it necessarily the thing that pops up the most is the most important thing? And I don't know a better way to do this. So if you ask the question, like you said, how did you find me, or why did you come to me? And 5 of the 10 people say, because you were so pleasant, whatever that may be, is how do you determine what your primary marketing message should be from that data? Is it just the overall similarity of certain responses, or is it more detailed than that?
I think looking,
if that makes sense, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it does. I think looking at the overall consensus is helpful, but the things that I look for are the things that really kind of smack me in the face. So like, wait, what? How am I not doing this?
Maybe it's super opposite of what you thought.
Yeah, or
that's what stands
like
out.
Something, anytime I do this, something that people always tell me about working with me is they were finally able to understand really complex topics because of the way I break them down and make them easy. Well, to me, that's just how I explain stuff. That's not something that I was ever, really putting out there. But I could take that message and use that as, this is all step by step. This is going to make it so much easier for you. So I really look for the things that are just like, okay, I didn't realize that. And then, if you have one thing that stands out in stark contrast to everything else, I would use your gut with that. Do you want to ignore that, or, do you want to go with the consensus? But really, when thinking about your messaging, you want to think about, who do I want to be the go-to person for, and what is the problem that I'm solving for them? So I am John, and I make wedding portrait sessions with families with small kids painless.
Or women who love Coach bags, or something like that. You can.
So if maybe, you do family photos and people have been telling you like, oh my God, you were so good with my kids. I thought it was going to be a nightmare. Okay. How can we turn that into, this is what I help people with? I create portrait sessions that don't make you want to pull your hair out. And they will.
And you may have never known. Yeah, that was the problem that you were really, people needed to be solved, unless you didn't, because they may have gone to other photographers. They had no control over the kids, and somehow you were a miracle child whisperer. They sat still for the 20 minutes and weren't running all over the place. And that was your gold right there, that somehow kids behave magically in your building or with you. And people can see that and say, that's what I need.
Yeah, and if that is what I'm looking for, if I'm looking for a family photographer, and that's my biggest concern going into it, someone who is addressing it right off the bat is going to get my sale.
Attention, at least, or a second thought.
Right. Because no one else is addressing that concern.
But I guess the bottom line here, and this is what's going to take a little bit of work as well, is after you aggregate all that data, and you may need someone like you, to be honestly, to put this all together to make sense of it. The bottom line here is you want to decommoditize yourself and your business. And I don't know, well, people may be able to do that, but we would probably turn to someone like you, I guess, to look through all this and say, listen, this is the message that's standing out in this data. If you want to separate yourself, this is the direction to go. This is how to advertise yourself, and this is how to market yourself. And this is how you're not going to be the same as the 7 other wedding photographers in your town. And so that's really the bottom line and what we're trying to dig out of this data that we've just gathered. And then I'm going to cut you. And this is where you're going to create. You call it creating that category of one, and that's ultimately what this is driving towards here.
It is, and when I work with people inside my membership, the Wedding Business Collective, the first place I have them go is into creating a marketing plan that's going to make things easier. And the first part of that is figuring this out. So who am I targeting? Who are they? What do they want from me so that I can show up as that person? And you're right. Sometimes it does need feedback. Sometimes it's like, I feel like I'm almost there. I just need to bounce this off of someone. And I highly recommend you do, because when you figure this out, this is such a pillar piece.
This is what it's all about. This is the whole, yeah.
And then you can attract clients and book clients. But if you don't have the foundation of who I'm trying to work with, how I'm going to attract them, what I'm going to do and say to communicate that I'm solving the problem that they want solved, then you're going to continually have problems.
Right. And this is how you become the cardiologist.
It is.
That's as simple as it gets. If you are not wanting to receive those messages, well, why should I pick you? Because the other wedding photographer is charging $1,000 less. This is the answer to that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because then it isn't about price. It's about the value that they've placed on you.
And this is the scary thing. And this is why when you're working for Gucci and someone doesn't go running into the boardroom and go, Target just put out a faux leather bag for like $39. Shutter the company. Why would anybody buy a Gucci bag when Target is selling something for $39? We can't compete. And this is where that all comes from, because nobody at Gucci is shuttering or doing anything other than probably drinking their cafe lattes just because Target put out a brand new line of purses at $39, faux leather purses, and is undercutting Gucci.
Yeah, they're not even competitors. They're serving 2 different clients.
Right, which is another whole story and branding and so forth. But yeah, and this is how you take yourself out of that rat race, and this is how you become a non-commodity. That's not a real thing, is it? Is it non-commodity?
That sounds right.
I don't know. It sounds kind of awkward to me. But how you become unique, and you have to rise above that pricing pressure level, and that's really what you're shooting for. And then when you kind of get through this, that's that aha moment. And then when you start getting these inquiries that saying, I'm picking you because of X, Y, and Z, and not necessarily because you were $50 less than the other person, then you're taking steps in the right direction.
Yeah, you do not want to compete on price. Everybody loses when you do that.
Right. And it's not necessary, like I said, and the Gucci and the Target, it's just not a race you need to get caught up in, like you said, because it's just a race to the bottom. And sadly, a lot of people get stuck in there. And then we'll move on here. And once we have all this great information, we got to use it for something, Heidi. What are we doing now? How can I know who I am? I found that out. I'm a great Pepsi drinking, made with real sugar soda type of guy. And how can I use that to make some more money? Or what do I do from here that I've done all this hard work? There's got to be
Yeah. So the way that I teach people to develop their marketing plans is to take this information and then choose your channels. So where are you going to market? Pick 3. You can have 1 experiment if you'd like, because you are going to choose these based off of your ideal client. How did you reach them? How can you reach more people like them? And then if you want to experiment with something, great, do it. But keep it to the 1 experiment. This way, we're not just randomly marketing. You can say, okay, for the next 90 days, and that's how I always tell people the plan, is I am going to show up on Instagram, Pinterest, and I'm going to work on the SEO on my website. Great. So you made that decision. And I really like to separate decision making from doing. I think we really have these two frames of.
But wait, I got to cut you off. You mean I don't right away go out there and start spending lots of money on
Please
ads?
don't.
Oh, Heidi, I'm doing it all wrong. Oh, all right. Well, I'll listen to you. Okay, so go on. I thought I had you there, but I guess I was wrong. Oh boy.
So I really like to separate the CEO part of you in your business and the worker bee part of you in your business. So the way I teach creating a marketing plan is doing this CEO level work and making the decisions and planning. So you've decided who you're trying to reach. You know what you need to say to them. You know the kind of messaging you need to use and what they care about. Great. We've chosen 3 places we're going to market for the next 90 days.
And the website's a good start.
It is.
Yeah, and it's right there. Yeah, as long as you have a little web skills, you can do that on your own. You could do that yourself. Yeah.
You know, it could be one of your things for the next 90 days. You're going to improve the copy on your website.
Right. Little by little. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So then once I know, okay, these are the 3 things I'm doing for the next 90 days. Okay, well, what am I going to do in the first month? What am I going to do in the second month? What am I going to do in the third month? In some platforms, it's going to be the same thing. Maybe you're still going to post to Instagram 3 times a week or whatever it is. But for something like your copy or your SEO, you know, there's different components to that. So I'll get to that in 60 days, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it right now. So when you go to this level of planning, you can easily look at what you need to do and you can batch it. So you could, if you wanted to, sit down the first Monday of the month and create all of your Instagram posts and all of your Pinterest posts, and then just schedule them and you're done. How easy is that?
It doesn't have to be a time suck. You don't have to spend hours and hours a day.
No, I'm all about making it easier. I don't think you should spend any more time than absolutely.
Yeah. Who has more? Like I said, most of us are going 18 hours a day anyway.
Right. Yeah,
so it doesn't have
that's a big problem. I really want to change that.
Yeah, that's another whole show. Yeah, that's another whole, I need help there.
But so much of it is, okay, like I'm going to break this down into pieces. So what do I need every week for Instagram? What text do I need? What images, what videos do I need? What types of posts am I posting and on which day? And then it just becomes putting the puzzle together. You're not like inventing the puzzle anymore.
And using the data that you found out and that wording and the stuff that you found out from interviewing the clients as the message in these, and using that same wording again, not changing it or putting it through your filter and saying, well, I think she really
right. And continuing to learn from that. So I can't tell you how many times I have put something out into the world, not thinking much of it. And then I looked at, you know, the metrics of it and I was like, that's weird. That's doing way better than I thought it would. Okay, great. I'm going to do more of that.
Yeah. And this is like a little secret. I'm going to give like the boudoir people here a little, you know, and these boudoir photographers are smitten on this empowerment thing. And, you know, like 6-7 years ago, they pushed all their chips in on this. Everything was empower, empower, empower. Nobody ever says that's why they come in. You know, so that message was gone from my website like a long time ago and didn't make a difference because, you know, I had been doing a little bit of this and talking to people. And it turns out a lot of women are just really looking to have a little bit of fun coming in, you know, so that became the focus of what I was writing. And it made a huge difference, you know, taking that heavy spiritual thing off of there and just sticking with a light, fun. They just want a gift. They just want a wedding present. They're not coming in, you know, for me to be their spiritual Sherpa. They're not looking to have their lives changed. And surprise, 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 you know, that's like an example that I can use from my personal experience. And if you're pounding away on this message, it may not be what your ideal customer is coming to you. I mean, so that's like a practical application of what we're talking about here. So,
and I'm sure that informs the rest of your marketing. You know, what you're saying and what you're sharing and the tone that you're using.
Yeah, so that's a good example. And it could be, hey, that could be somebody's gig and that could be somebody's client, but that was not my client. So that's why you can't go copying things that you see everywhere and putting it in your message, because you may think that you're doing great, but you're not speaking to that person that you want to come in to see you or your ideal client.
Yeah, and anytime you copy something, whether it's the messaging, the pricing, it's like you are assuming that person did the work. And if we're going to guess whether any person did any work, you should always assume they didn't,
because they could have just copied it from somebody else who copied it from somebody else. And who knows? That's the thing. You don't know if that's a crazy person. You don't know if they're making any money. You don't know how many jobs they're doing. You don't know what the costs
Maybe they're
are.
independently wealthy and they don't need to make money from this business.
So that's another whole show. I could speak for that in an hour of why you should not do that. And people who do that are just setting themselves up for failure. You don't know what you want to make. How do you know what you want to make may not be what that other person want to make? So, Heidi, you're making my back curl. My spine is curling up into this thing. But, and then one other topic that you have in here, and this is really the meat and bones of this, is when you start your marketing and when you start your new message and putting it out there, not to be on your website, there's a goal. Now, when you're changing your message, what is the goal? I mean, what is the ultimate goal of bringing people to your website?
Getting more inquiries.
Yeah. So there has to be, you take this information, and if it's on your website, you're trying to get them somewhere. And if it's off your website, if you're putting in this on your Pinterest or your Instagram, the whole idea is to get people to come to your website.
And you can look at that. You don't have to just make marketing decisions on a whim. So often the data will tell you what to do or what to do more of.
You want to drive those people. That's the whole point of this. Drive those like-minded or ideal people to your website to convert them into dollars or customers or sales. And what are your thoughts on, again, and blogging? This could also be something that's done through blogging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's another way to create content that brings people to you.
And then your message here is super accurate, and you talk about this kind of dating scenario where, nobody walks into like any kind of usually high-priced item and buys it on the first moment. It's usually a lot of research involved, and they get to know it, and they're doing comparison, they're going online, they're looking at reviews. It's a long process, and before people usually pull the trigger on high, cost items that they're going to buy. And it's not any different for photographers. And really, that message just may be the beginning of a relationship, because even though someone may go, that really speaks to me, doesn't mean they're going to be buying your product at that moment.
No, absolutely not. And we do have to think about our marketing in that way. So we can't just expect people to show up on our website and buy from us. It's how are we consistently showing up and marketing to these people? And you've already chosen your channels. You know where you're marketing. I am a big fan of email marketing for this reason. But really, you have to think about the long term. So, people may find you, and in my case with wedding professionals, people may find you and they're not even engaged yet. They know they're going to get engaged.
People investigate a long time in that wedding. It's a long-term plan for them. Yeah.
And you just have to keep showing up in a consistent and sustainable way. You should not kill yourself over doing this. You should make it easy for yourself. But whether, you've decided you're going to create a blog post once every other week, or you're going to post to Instagram 3 times a week, whatever that is, just keep it consistent, because that shows that basically you have your shit together and things aren't just like falling apart on the back end, because no one wants to hire someone who comes across that way.
And I think the great message here is for people who are getting started. All this stuff is free that we're talking about so far. We're not talking even about spending money on ads, because Pinterest is free, and you can literally drive hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people a month from Pinterest, no cost, to your website. Blogging, no cost, to your website. And I guess the idea here is to gather emails, from people. Is that still effective? Is that still working out the best way to do that and get them to sign up or subscribe on a website and at least capture that so you can start getting them building that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's going to be one of two ways. So you can do it through email or you can do it through, retargeting on Facebook. But if you don't want to spend a bunch of money retargeting on Facebook, you could just build your email list.
And do that. And then ultimately, I guess, if you are an email or a retargeter, you keep putting yourself and that message in front of these people. Hey, remember me, so they don't forget about you. Because especially in the wedding business or any other, you're not the only. That's the biggest mistake. You're not the only person people are looking at. And I think that's if they contact you, they could still be talking to 5 other photographers too. So you have to stay fresh in their mind. And when it comes to like these email, what's a good monthly to send something out and say, hey, remember me, or you signed up, or are you a big fan of sort of like these, I'm losing my train of thought here with the prescribed emails, like the automated email messages where someone may get one the first day of the first week or so forth. And
I'm a fan of both. I actually have a course in my membership and it has a 7 email autoresponder sequence that you can take and tweak and use. So I like to set it up where they get this kind of introduction, and maybe we deal with common concerns or questions or issues. You're adding value through that. You're not just blasting them with sales messaging.
Right. There's purpose-driven emails, just like this whole process is purpose-driven. Yeah. And when these people are subscribed, and this is something I'm just curious about too, and you've done all this work and you're targeting these ideal people. Do you think it's really good to, again, be personal in these emails and send out a little bit more about yourself, hey, and to be more personable in this? Or it doesn't always have to be like sales, does it? Like buy, or could it just be more like lifestyle? Lifestyle isn't the right thing, but maybe a little bit how your work or a little bit about your business and so forth. I'm
a really big fan of looking at, okay, what do I want out of this email? And what's its job? Is its job to get people to go to this particular page? Its job to get someone to reply? And then how am I going to add value to this? So that could be, a lot of our clients, when they first come to us, they're, in your case, really nervous and really concerned about what's going to be like.
Because I'm just a creepy guy with a camera. So, for me, I got to overcome a huge obstacle right there.
Let's overcome that obstacle in one of those emails and talk through, okay, this is what the process is like. And you can include a testimonial so people understand, okay, I'm learning from all of this.
Right. So it's good to give a little bit of about you, or not necessarily everything has to be 100% salesy, buy now, where you don't have to start bombarding them with specials or offers or discounts.
I'm a big fan of doing that through teaching. So, if addressing an objection, that is a teaching moment. You're showing someone why what they think is going to happen is not going to happen. And here is how this actually works. Or addressing frequently asked questions so that they're getting something out of this exchange.
And how about, this is one of the chapters in there too, and then you've done this marketing, you've gone on to Pinterest. Should people be tracking, or what should they track? Your inquiry. Say I was getting, and then this stuff isn't going to go into effect immediately because, Google is slow, Pinterest is slow. This stuff really ramps up over time. But, you would be saying, all right, I was only getting 2 inquiries a month. And now that I've been doing this, I'm up to 3 or I'm up to 4. Or how many new clients have you had? So what are some important things because you want to know that this is making a difference, right? So you what are some things that photographers can keep track of here that they know that their efforts have been making a difference?
Yeah, so some great things to look at on a regular basis. You could do this, if you want to, you can do it on a weekly basis. I would say a monthly basis is probably fine, unless you are actively changing things around a lot. Then you might want to look at it on a weekly basis. So you want to look at, what are your traffic sources? Where's the traffic coming from?
Like Google analytics or something like that?
So are you getting a ton of traffic from Pinterest? Great. But what is that traffic doing? Is it all bouncing right off the website? Is it then submitting a contact form and you know through Google Analytics how many people have done that? So that way you can look at, okay, what is happening through each of these various traffic sources? And, you can make decisions about how to tweak that or
pour more energy into it or not.
Or what you might want to test. And I think that's a very healthy way to go about it as opposed to constantly reinventing the wheel, which I see so many people do.
Yeah, so you may do a little bit of A/B testing and, put some pins on Pinterest that have one message or one kind of picture, and you can switch your pictures and your messages around and see if you get a few more clicks or so forth. And also, too, I think you may agree on your contact form or somewhere like, and how did you find me type of a thing, a box that people can say how they came across you. And I guess that's another way you can check how if your methods are working or not. Because if they're checking Pinterest, then you know that what you were doing on Pinterest sort of paid off.
People can see you in multiple places, so you can track where someone comes from when they take whatever action you want them to take. So maybe they came from Google and filled out your form, but maybe they originally found you on Pinterest, so that would be helpful to know.
Yeah, and I know these people are all listening and they're like, yeah, but they're not even talking about Google Ads. So like at what point, or where do we need to be, or what do we got to do now if we do want to go out on Facebook or on Google Ads and start spending some of this dough that we got burning a hole in our pockets and doing some ads? Because I know we mentioned before it wasn't time. Is it time now, or what do we need to do if we want to do that effectively, knowing all that?
Okay, I would say you can do this if it's one of your 3 things you picked for the 90 days.
So don't do it until we get to that point.
Yeah, you want to know who you're targeting. You want to have your messaging down, and you really have to be intentional with ads. So where do you want to take people, and what action do you want them to take? Because if you don't know the answer to that, and you don't have a clear path for them to do that, running an ad and dropping them on your homepage is just going to be a waste of money.
So you need to have a destination for them to go to that can give them the result that you were trying to get. So you could translate into English. My English wasn't so great.
So you can, if you were going to run an ad that got people to sign up to your email list, that could be a good approach. If you're going to run an ad, maybe you're doing a contest of some kind
or a specific special, having them go to one page that they can sign up for that special, a purpose-driven visit, not just someone popping up on your homepage. And so this is nice, and them hitting the back button because you spent $1 or $1.50 or wedding photographers. It could be a lot more than that for that click, and you got to get you got to get the most from that click as you can, and that money.
It has to have a strategy. So sometimes it makes sense to run an ad to a blog post or to a podcast episode, but you have to know what your strategy is there. What happens after that?
Yeah, just doing ads for no purpose is going to richen the lives of the Google people, and it's not really going to help you out that much. And, I know we don't focus too much on ads, but I guess the point here was that you don't necessarily have to start spending a lot of money to get these results. And it can enhance what we're doing, but it really doesn't have to be the core of what we're doing. Because spending $1,000 a month or $500 a month on Facebook ads, if it's not really sculpted and targeted in the right way, you might as well you can send it to me. Just have everybody send it to me, rather than give it to Facebook, because you're just kind of flushing it away. And you may hit once in a while, you may grab a person from there, but really it's not an effective use of that
you
money.
do have to be really specific. So the last ads I ran were to Book More Wedding Summit, which I ran, and I kept a very close eye on it, and I knew exactly what my cost per lead was, and it was doing really well, so I turned it up. And, it was still doing really well, so I turned it up. But I knew that, for every dollar I put in, I was getting like $11 out.
Yeah. So that's where, and that's probably I don't want to get too much into that here, and that's a little bit of an advanced kind of a topic, but yeah, and that comes down to a whole formula and what we were talking about earlier about measuring, revenue and what it costs you to get a client. And someone may roll their eyes if you say in the boudoir world or in the wedding photography world, you're spending $50, $75, $100 just to get one client, because that sounds crazy. But is that necessarily crazy?
I mean, it totally depends what you're making from that. If I am making $2,000 for spending $100, I'll do that all day.
I trade 100 for 2,000 any day of the week, So, but that takes a lot of targeted ads, a lot of knowledge that you kind of outlined for us here, and you really have to know what you're doing, because you could very easily be flushing that money down the toilet if it's not done in a way. Yeah. So if you're running that type of wedding business or a high-end boudoir business, I trade $100 for a client any day of the week.
Yeah. It just, I think really the through line with all of this is that it has to be done with intention.
Right. And then there's no point in spending that if you're only making $75 a person, so it's all relative, and it takes work. And so when, I would be talking to somebody and they would be asking me how much I spent on Google and Facebook ads, that's only half the story. Because I know what I'm getting back, and it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of learning, and it takes a lot of time to figure it out. And people think you're crazy in the spring or near Christmas when you're telling them you're spending $2,000 or $3,000 a month. But right, when you're trading that $100 a person for $2,000, $1,500, I'll take that.
Yeah, you're no longer guessing at what to do to bring clients in. You know what works for you.
Right, and that's where, once you put all these steps in, you can use all of this information. And it takes some money to get started, because when someone's just starting off, they're not going to have all this, and nor should you have this money lying around to invest in this. But when you figured it out, you can really use those platforms to kind of make a return. And that's really what they're there for, is to, and they're kind of comprehensive. Wouldn't you agree? They're like in Google ads and Facebook, there's so many options in there. It could be overwhelming for people, and then simply checking the wrong ad type or the wrong message or the wrong text. And I don't always hit it right the first time. And you're also a believer of changing things. And so if something's not working out, stop it and change your wording, change your to get it where it is.
100%.
Yeah. Boy, Heidi, this is exhausting, but I think we're on to it.
It all just, like I said, it all really comes down to being intentional. And most of us are not being intentional, at least about some part of our business. So if we can apply that intentionality, oh man, the results are incredible.
Right. And it takes work. And I appreciate you laying this out here, because there isn't a magic bullet. And that was the one message I think I saw in your material and your literature. There isn't, like, you can't flip a switch to do this. It's a concerted effort. It takes some learning. But if you put your time into it, like we mentioned earlier, you can get out of this a lot more than you put into it. Wouldn't you say that's a fair thing there? And we covered like a ton of ground here. This was like a whole college course here today. This is like a lot of information. And just to recap for people, if they really want to read about this, where can people find the book that they can go and purchase? Because I think it was on Amazon, Clone Your Best Clients. And where's the best way for people to go? So you can head over to my website, evolveyourweddingbusiness.com, and you'll see in the navigation, there is a link to it. And you can pick it up on Amazon. You could go directly to evolveyourweddingbusiness.com/clone. But I highly recommend coming over to the website, because there is a training that's going to go even deeper into creating this kind of marketing plan for you that, if you've listened this far, you're going to love. Yeah, if you're still hanging in, you're good. We've weeded out all the chaff by now. So these are the people who want to work and kind of understand at this point. And your website, again, is evolveyourweddingbusiness.com. And so if people really, really want some help putting this whole marketing effort together, that's really your gig, isn't it? And people can reach out to you as far as helping them with marketing plans. Absolutely. And so forth. Yeah, you just don't work with photographers. I see you work with all kinds of wedding professionals that, like you said, stationers and so forth, that people involved in marketing, like you said, because these principles apply not just to photographers. And last but not least, we can listen to you whenever we want to.
You
can't
sure
we?
can. I have a podcast, the Evolve Your Wedding Business podcast.
And there's a lot of episodes, and there's a lot of good information on that podcast too. Because I was listening to some of your shows. You do a good show. Yeah. You do, and you have some cursing in there and stuff.
My personality.
I know, that's right. No, I'm like, hey, it was like she means business. I was like, it made me sit up straight in my chair, and I was like, woo, like I was like, all right, Heidi, I don't know, but it's great information. There's plenty of episodes that you have on all kinds of topics, and some you're doing by yourself, and sometimes you have guests on there. And I enjoyed listening to it, and I'm going to keep listening to your show. I subscribe to you now. I'm listening to your show because I want to get smarter. I do, and I think we did it.
I think we did.
We did a good job today. Now we can get to those ASMR pickles. I'm going to go and people can listen to me chew pickles for the next 20 minutes. And that was a good show. And what I'll do is let you say goodbye to everybody. And then I think we're going to take a nap.
Sounds good. I'm tired. Well, thank you so much for listening. And like I said, head over to evolveyourweddingbusiness.com. You can sign up for that free training right there on the homepage and take this even further and put it into action for yourself.
Yeah, do it, people.
Do it.
And thanks. Do it. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.